Not sure what happened to her, but please give us a moment to see if we can get her on.
Okay, we will wait some minutes.
Thank you, Chair. While we're trying to get her online, maybe we'll go ahead and play the video.
As a United Nations treaty paves the way for the region to accelerate progress in this area by digitalizing trade procedures. Cross-border trade digitalization is expected to not only grow trade competitiveness, but also to address new challenges, including the increase in small shipments associated with cross-border e-commerce and the rise of the digital economy. Implementation of paperless trade measures could reduce international trade costs in the region by 25%, saving the region $600 billion annually. Today, in many cases, if some countries digitalize most trade procedures at the national level, paper is still required, often because electronic data and documents acceptable locally are not recognized across borders. To advance cross-border paperless trade in the region, there is a need to harmonize technical and legal standards that apply to electronic trade data and documents, reduce capacity gaps among countries in the region, enhance collaboration between the public and the private sector, and establish a strong intergovernmental platform. To address these needs, a group of more than 25 Asia-Pacific economies at different stages of national development work together to develop a framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific.
I believe that this framework agreement is the key to solve these issues.
After 4 years of intensive consultations and negotiations, the framework agreement was adopted in 2016 and is now open to all 53 UN SCAP member states. The framework is dedicated to the digitalization of trade processes, aiming to enable the exchange and mutual recognition of trade-related data and documents in electronic form among national and sub-regional single windows and other paperless trade systems.
By having this paperless trade framework agreement, that we can expand more to the other country to have a paperless trade transaction among Asia-Pacific countries.
The framework agreement brings significant benefits to the Asia-Pacific region by providing a region-wide multilateral intergovernmental platform. This creates a neutral and dedicated space for development and testing of legal and technical solutions for cross-border paperless trade that build on national, bilateral, and sub-regional initiatives, helping to achieve the full digital implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement.
This initiative by UNSCAP complements WTO's Trade Facilitation Agreement. The framework agreement on cross-border paperless trade will also provide a very useful dimension in the full digital implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement.
I hope that all governments will be able to actually participate in and support this development. I'm sure that all businesses, large and small, will be able to benefit greatly from this trend, and we can then all contribute to the sustainable development goals of the United Nations.
Inclusive access to new knowledge and capacity building opportunities. This allows committed countries to fully participate in the framework agreement, regardless of their digital trade readiness or their development stage, helping them to develop realistic action plans and supporting their implementation through pilot projects and training activities.
To make the most of our region's vibrant digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution, I would like to encourage all ASCAP member states to join this framework agreement. By collaborating to promote trade digitalization, we can make commercial exchanges more transparent and efficient, and support inclusive growth, prosperity, and sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific.
Mr. Sin, can you please release your mic, refresh your screen, and come back in again? Thank you very much.
I can see. I'd like to ask the organizers, can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I had various options here, and finally one of them worked, so I apologize for joining you a little bit late. I especially apologize to the Deputy Minister from Kyrgyzstan. So with this, I would like to start section 3. Our title today is Cross-Border Trade Facilitation and Paperless Trade for Inclusive and Efficient Recovery from COVID. We heard from the opening speeches this morning that we have a very sobering picture in front of us. It is projected that due to COVID-19, there will be a 4.2% decline in global GDP per capita. That is a very high number. International trade is one of those areas that has been severely affected, especially because of the restrictions on the export of goods and restrictions also on transport. The resulting impact on people's lives has been huge. On the one side, it has resulted in loss of incomes and jobs. On the other, it has caused significant delays in importing and accessing critical medical and food supplies. But every challenge also presents opportunity. COVID-19 has demonstrated to all of us how valuable paperless trade can be in increasing efficiency and speed of trade when we most need it. What we need to do now is to look at how we can remove all barriers to trade in general, but to digital trade in specific, to ensure faster and cheaper movement of goods and services to the benefit of people's well-being across the region. And this is what our speakers today will be focusing on: how to facilitate cross-border trade using paperless or digital trade, so all economies in the SPECA region can recover from COVID-19 at the earliest. We have a distinguished group of 6 speakers at our event today. Their interventions will be followed by a discussion among all of you, all of our participants. I would like to request all speakers to keep their interventions to the time limit, that is no more than 10 minutes, preferably less. Due to time limitations, let me apologize in advance if I have to intervene and remind you to shorten your speech. And with that, I would like to now introduce our first speaker. Mr. Jan Duval is the chief of the Trade Policy and Facilitation section of ESCAP. Over the past 15 years, Mr. Duval has conducted research and delivered technical assistance and advisory services on trade policy and facilitation throughout Asia and the Pacific, including on WTO trade facilitation. So, Mr. Duval, the floor is yours. Please go ahead. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Chair. I will do my best to keep at 10 minutes or within 10 minutes. I would like to thank all the participants for listening to the presentation. I believe that at the very beginning of the session, at 3 o'clock or at least Bangkok time, a short video was played on the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific, which is one of the tools that can be used to accelerate implementation of paperless trade in SPECA and beyond SPECA. So I will not go into a lot of details on the framework agreement, but we'll still focus on how useful and beneficial it may be for SPECA countries. So my presentation is on trade facilitation and digitalization for inclusive and efficient recovery. Next. So I think, as we've heard a little bit this morning already, right? All Asia-Pacific countries and SPECA countries included saw a dramatic fall in trade and in some commodity prices. Supply chains were strongly affected by different COVID-19 responses and containment measures in different countries. This affected production, this affected movement of goods. And so in a way, this also widened the existing connectivity gap between some of the landlocked countries in the region and some of the more isolated countries with other countries, because those countries, and that includes a lot of SPECA countries, have fewer options in terms of connecting to the rest of the world to keep trade going. So additional inspections, reduced hours of operation, road closures, sometimes border closures, have actually led to an increase in trade costs. Next. This can be seen in some of the forecasts and estimates we've done at ESCAP on trade costs in different subregions. On average, for the whole year of 2020, we expect trade costs to go up for all traded goods by about 7%. But for North and Central Asia specifically, so that's again mostly the SPECA region, we expect trade costs on average to go up by 9%. So that's one of the SPECA region is one of the most affected region in terms of trade cost increase, and there's variation across countries with much higher trade cost increase in some cases. Next. So the responses in trade and transport facilitation has been quite active. Many countries try to keep their borders open for goods, right? If not for people, it was difficult to let people in, but goods have been flowing and increasingly are still flowing more and more normally, not only in SPECA countries, but I think across many of the countries in Asia and the Pacific. A lot of pilot digital and contactless solutions have been implemented, and that includes increased acceptance, at least on a temporary basis, of some of the electronic documents necessary to conduct trade, that, such as electronic certificates of origins, electronic sanitary and phytosanitary certificates, and so on. But again, mostly on a temporary basis, and also sometimes only for essential goods, right, such as medical devices and so on. So we've seen some improvement in transparency in the process, though, and some attempts to have interagency and cross-border coordination and cooperation. Fortunately, in many cases, limited. Next. So if you look at the improvement in trade facilitation and paperless trade in SPECA countries, not only during the COVID-19 crisis, but well before that, right? You see that SPECA countries have done a lot of work trying to make their trade procedures more transparent and more automated. And so this, what you can see here on the slide, is a result from the UN Global Survey on Digital and Sustainable Trade Facilitation. And then it shows the implementation rate of a group of measures between 2015 and 2019. And you see that a big progression from a 33% implementation in 2015 to a 53 or almost 54% implementation in 2019. So very significant progress, and essentially all countries. Next. Obviously, what is important to achieve, and especially in the time of pandemic, is to reduce physical contact and also make it possible to actually exchange electronic data and documents across borders in an electronic way, rather than through papers. Right now, it's still very much paper-based. The entire trade process and some of the transit process is still very much paper-based. So there is a need to move forward on cross-border paperless trade. And this is something that is very challenging to do because it does require high-level political commitment and long-term effort by countries. Next. So the gains from potential gains from doing that are very high. As you can see on this slide, trade costs in SPECA countries, if you achieve cross-border paperless trade, can help reduce trade costs by upward of 24%, which is very significant. Next. So there is a lot of trade-related initiatives in the region, and some of the representatives are here today. Many of those initiatives involve some work on cross-border paperless trade development, and there is a need for harmonization and working together on some of this. Next. So in that context, recommendation that comes, that has been made and we keep making is that all countries join the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific as soon as possible. As you've seen in the video, this is a UN treaty. This is actually the newest United Nations treaty in the area of trade and development. And it's open to all SPECA countries and is specifically dedicated to pilot testing and cross-border paperless trade solutions. And it fully supports the digital implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. Next. So this is a good time to join the free agreement because it will enter into force most likely in the first half of 2021. Azerbaijan already ratified the treaty and is arguably one of the leaders in cross-border paperless trade in SPECA, but also in Asia and the Pacific at this stage. Islamic Republic of Iran, with a big part of countries of some of the SPECA countries, is also already ratified it. Bangladesh just ratified last month, and China also completed its domestic ratification process. So by having SPECA countries joining now or as soon as possible, they can ensure that SPECA priorities are reflected in the regional framework as soon as possible. Next. On a more practical level, I think it's advisable that SPECA countries conduct readiness assessments for cross-border paperless trade. And here I just want to flag a tool that was just launched, that is about to be launched actually next month, but it's just finalized, and so you can already access it. That allows to conduct those readiness assessments for cross-border paperless trade online, both the legal requirements and the technical requirements. So you're very welcome to use this. Next. And the last recommendation towards advancing cross-border paperless trade and trade digitalization in SPECA countries would be to really set up a task force on cross-border electronic data exchange among SPECA countries. We've already done this for Northeast Asia with China, Mongolia, Republic of Korea, and Russian Federation working together on the pilot testing a solution for cross-border paperless trade. And this work is being done with the World Customs, in collaboration with the World Customs Organization. So some similar setup may be explored by SPECA countries to really make concrete progress in this area. Next.
Mr. Duval, I would like to, okay, good, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm essentially done. I'm sorry for exceeding a little bit the 10 minutes, but I'm happy to give back the floor right away.
Okay, no problem at all. You didn't exceed it by too much, so thank you very much. And I won't attempt to summarize it other than to say that COVID has caused an increase in trade costs of about 9% in the North and Central Asia region, I heard from what you said. But by implementing paperless trade, we could decrease the costs by 24%. It's a huge gain. So it's obviously something that everybody should consider. So with that, I would now like to pass on to our the other speaker, Mr. Mario Apostolov, who is the regional advisor at UNECE. He's worked for 20 years on trade facilitation, notably in the framework of the UN Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business. And he also coordinates the UN Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia. Mr. Apostolov, the floor is yours, please.
Mr. Apostolov, please click Request to Speak.
Thank you very much. Now it works. Please put my presentation on. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Signanoglu. Thank you, Mr. Akhmatov, moderator of this forum, and for the purpose of better understanding by the people from the region, I will make my presentation in Russian. Please move to the next slide. Уже несколько из выступающих.
Several speakers already mentioned, said very good words about Ashgabat Initiative, which was adopted by speaker countries last year, which considers decline or reduction of barriers for trade and transport in the region based on convention standards and recommendations issued by the UN, including our UNSC standards and the recommendations for trade facilitation. And we've heard that a lot has been done to put forward this initiative, trade facilitation strategy, and a lot was of analytical work was done for sustainable and smart trade, for transport connectivity, and we've got 2 studies on procedures of border crossing and on non-tariff measures, NTMs. Several measures or several events were just held to facilitate the trade and using innovative methods. And we are working on pilot launching of mostly digitalization and multimodal corridors. And we are working on coordinating reforms for trade facilitation with the involvement of private sector. And we are calling on for further development of joint projects and applying innovative instruments and tools for trade facilitation. And we are addressing issues of establishing a fund to for new fundraising techniques. Next slide, please. I already mentioned that last year there was the strategy, speaker strategy for trade facilitation adopted. And on this slide, you can see that several stages were passed to formalize, to draft this strategy, to formalize it, and to have it agreed and discussed with the countries. And last year, on the 21st of November, so Speaker Governing Council adopted that strategy. What was done? What has been done? Survey on harmonizing border crossing procedures was carried out 2 days ago. There was a meeting of the session of the Speaker Working Group on Trade, and that study was presented there, and we view it as a working document, Speaker document, and we call on all countries to provide their feedback so that this document could be improved as in view of the recommendations to harmonize border crossing procedures. So everything was fine and clear for forwarders and carriers and traders, so that all transparent procedures could be set. Studies on NTM, non-tariff measures, was carried out to identify how non-tariff measures that are being developed in terms of within the context of COVID-19 pandemic, not to become barriers. And we just held several trainings last year, including in July, on 4 measures for the agreement for trade facilitation agreement in all countries. So we just conducted national workshops with Uzbekistan back in March, then with Azerbaijan on creation of a national committee for trade facilitation. And in this regard, we are intending the study of preparedness and willingness of countries just to implement this strategy. Next slide, please. Here you can see an abstract from the study, from the report of the working group chairperson, Mr. Abdurrahman Zadar, who is going to have to speak today. Here you see the list of the events that were held. Yeah, next slide, please. Here you can see a list of some measures. Actually, we track and monitor how recommendations are implemented in specific measures. on trade facilitation strategy. So this is not just the document that was passed or approved. So we just are looking jointly with the countries how these measures are put into force. Due to the lack of time, I'm not going to go into detail into each activity plan, but in how they are carried out. Some of them are being implemented. In relation to some of them, we are planning, we intend to carry out them. And and we view speaker countries as the driving force to apply these measures. Next slide, please. I just showed that last year, in addition to a trade facilitation strategy, there was a document adopted which is called Principles for Sustainable Trade. 20 principles comprised so that the countries could view them, review them, and integrate them into their sustainable development strategies. Next slide, please. And what we do in terms of applying this, so we are carrying out analysis of willingness and readiness of each country, whether to what extent each country is ready to apply these principles, to employ these principles. And this analysis would comprise risks of non-action and what should be done. Some recommendations would be just drafted to improve trade facilitation and how just to move forward to the circular economy. Next slide, please. So here you can see some tools that have been created. We already mentioned that there is a common project on response to COVID-19 challenges, and our division has a segment for digitalization of data sharing and documents within multimodal transport corridors. And we always just thought that the standards are the just basis to simplify and facilitate the trade. We have to speak one language in order to simplify procedures and facilitate goods movement between the countries. And now the process is ongoing to pass standards where there are gaps in the sphere of multimodal transportation. So here you can see the link to where the standards can be reviewed, and there are a new one, and I will just, tomorrow I will talk more about this, and we call on all countries to work with us on these issues. Of course, there are some other tools that were developed, such as English, Russian, Chinese glossary for trade facilitation. Next slide, please. And I already mentioned about the non-tariff barriers study. So this is my last slide. So it contains conclusions that specific non-tariff measures should be used properly, and it specifies what should be done so that these non-tariff measures should not be translated into non-tariff barriers. And several speakers already mentioned that there are structural issues faced that just had been faced prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic just revealed that the impact of these structural issues on economy and deteriorated it. And it's necessary that the strategic documents that were adopted should be put into effect. And we suggest that recommendations of this study should be included into the work of the working group, SPECA working group on trade, and a SPECA program in general. So this is the end of my presentation, and I'm really glad that so I was within this time frame, 10-minute time frame that was set by our chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apostolov. Indeed, you were within the time frame. Thank you very much. And I was really interested in what you presented. It's obvious that there's a lot of work that's already been done, including the principles, but not just coming up with the principles. Already readiness assessments are being done. I would like to congratulate you all on that. But as you said, we have to be careful that while all this positive work is going on, countries do not start imposing non-trade barriers, which would work against all the good work that's been put in place. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, His Excellency Mr. Timur Jakselikov. He's a member of the Board for Economy and Financial Policy of the Eurasian Economic Commission. He has a distinguished career in public service and has held many high-ranking positions in the government of Kazakhstan. And we all really look forward to his comments at this session. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Большое спасибо, большое спасибо. Уважаемые дамы и господа, уважаемые участники конференции.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants of the forum. I would like to thank everyone and the organizers and everyone for this invitation to this forum. Global COVID-19 pandemic just led to decline of economic activity in all countries, and nobody can just bypass a negative effect on economy. To minimize a crisis effect, the governments just take broad scope of measures, among which providing governmental loans, subsidizing loan credit interests, delays and removal of insurance payments, maximum just reduction of employment and just supporting employment and many others. So the major sectors suffered. So these are like the objects for governmental support in 2020. Kazakhstan and Kyrgyz Republic as being speaker countries and are the members of Eurasian Economic Commission of Union. So Eurasian Economic Commission did not stay aside and within its competences passed certain measures to minimize pandemic impact, thus stimulating member countries. In particular, firstly, at the very beginning of the pandemic, back in March, Eurasian Economic Commission just set expert duties for disinfection, for PPEs, for specific medical equipment and materials set at zero, and there was exemption of duties for specific critical goods. In order to fast response to infection spread, there was an agreement achieved to conduct fast and operating consultations between governments as per response measures, and thus coordination of the activities of authorized bodies in the healthcare and epidemiological well-being of the population. I would like to say that the countries of the region in these difficult conditions take efforts to provide assistance to each other. For example, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan were providing humanitarian aid to their neighbors, thus delivering personal protection equipment, medical equipment, and food products. In addition, within the Eurasian Economic Union, there was an agreement to take faster response measures and measures on aid and deliveries in case of emergency or their deficit. One of the key areas related to the adaptation to social distancing and developing of non-barrier transboundary trade is use of paperless digital technologies. In this regard, we are taking certain measures. In particular, or in the nearest future, in Eurasian Economic Union, there will be an agreement passed on tracking goods imported to the customs union territory. This agreement just comprises sharing information from the databases to supervise turnover of goods.
Лежит цифровой документальный учет товаров, формирующийся из информационных систем.
The basic of this mechanism is a special digital track-down system to control movement of goods since the moment of their sending to the moment of their delivery. This way, we will control legitimate trade in the Eurasian Economic Union's space. Of course, without tracking down, is it possible to be competitive in the modern market, and this boosts business efficacy, decrease operational costs, and general contributes to business's transparency. According to an agreement, the member states will establish informational system to track down goods movement. And of course, this also implies better information exchange. And another system which we are in the process of establishment is the labeling or marking system for the goods in order to prevent illegitimate trade and goods turnover. And this applies to a number of controlled substances and goods. The marking and labeling system would enable us to control good movements through all supply chain. These systems also will boost transparency between the countries, and this way they will impact on trade facilitation in general and provide conducive environment for businesses. Another important focus of the Union is digitalization of customs, of tax administration. We call it the system of fiscal monitoring and mutual trade between the member states. This mechanism is specific for zero VAT rate and boosting transparency in goods movement through customs, through digital transformation of taxation, data exchange through integrated informational system by the Eurasian Economic Union. I would say that all those systems are based on the integrated digital system. They are aimed at exchanging important information, digitalization, mutual trade on goods and services, and general establishment, general environment of trust and transparency. This would also boost tax policy and would decrease shadow economy space. And for businesses, digitalization will significantly decrease the red tape and bureaucratic barriers. This would also contribute to faster movement of goods through border crossing points. In general, this would lift barriers to trade. The international experience proves that even at the start and midterm perspectives, these efforts are very beneficial for economy and businesses. Especially, this is very valuable under such uncertain circumstances caused by the pandemic. Distinguished participants, simplification, digitalization of trade would give us an opportunity to increase significantly trade volumes, benefits to our economies. It will create additional jobs and general improve life quality for our citizens. And It will also contribute to business resilience and competitiveness in the region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaksalukov, for your comments. I was very happy how much you highlighted the humanitarian support that countries in the region provided to each other, especially at the early stages of COVID-19. It was well noted all around and has really had an impact. I was also very happy of your mention about the impact not just on effectiveness, but also in improving transparency in trade that digital paperless trade can have on economies. So thank you very much for all your comments. And with that, I would like to now pass on to our next speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Abdurrahman Safar Ali Abdurrahmanzada, who is the Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade in Tajikistan, where I currently reside. He has served for many years in government and has extensive experience in trade policy, consumer markets, and WTO relations. He's also a very good partner to the UN country team in Tajikistan. Mr. Abdurrahmanzada, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Ms. Sizin. Sorry for the if it's possible, I turn off my video because of the voice can be cut off due to bad connection. Dear Sizin Sinalo, and dear distinguished colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, due to impact of the COVID-19 in 9 months of 2020, the economic growth of the Republic amounted to 4.2%, which is 3 percentage points less than in the same period last year, but by 0.7 percentage points more than in the first half of this year. Thus, in the third quarter, there is an increase in economic activity, which was associated with the aversion of the restrictive measures in connection with the spread of the coronavirus. Tajikistan's economy grew at the real rate of the 3.5% during January and June 2020, which is markedly lower than in the first 6 months of the preceding year. January-June 2020 nominal GDP amounted to 444 billion somoni, or 3,240,000,000. This year-on-year decline mainly attributed to the COVID-19 outbreak, resulting in the lower cargo turnover by 0.2%, passenger turnover 19.5%, and construction by 4.6%, and sales by 5.2%, retail trade 1.1%, and paid service to the population by 14%. The main driving forces of economic growth were the branches of the real sector of the economy, in particular industry and agriculture. Industrial production for 9 months increased by 10.7% compared to the same period last year. The volume of agriculture production in the first 9 months of 2020 increased by 8.1%, against the level of the corresponding period last year. The government of the Republic of Tajikistan pays special attention to the trade and connectivity in the region. Tajikistan actively engaged with the multilateral and bilateral system of promoting trade and connectivity. On direction, the country continued to fully comply with WTO rules and to successfully implement the approved program of adjustment of Tajikistan economy to the WTO membership, which consists of 75 actions. On bilateral relations, Tajikistan modified the free trade agreement with Uzbekistan and signed protocol on Dublin bilateral trade with Kazakhstan. And also the country is successfully implementing the free trade agreement with other countries. Also, Tajikistan launched the trade portal in April 2019, which is the first experience in the Central Asia, and it's platforms that would guide both local and foreign enterprises on import, export, and transit procedure for more than 1,500 products. The portal is developed in 3 languages, and its usage is relatively easy due to video guides on its utilization. Tajikistan Trade Portal providing for participants and businessmen wishing to establish commercial relations the most complete information about export, import, and transit procedures. A list of export products and description of the necessary procedures, as well as the wealth and legislative and statistical information, is a window to the world for the existing and potential participants in the international trade. The Tajikistan Trade Portal became very useful for the local and foreign enterprises during the COVID-19 pandemic due to contactless information obtaining. In the period of COVID-19 pandemic, the number of users of the portal significantly boosted, and now it accumulates more than 100,000 views from all over the world. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission and the United Nations Conference on the Trade and Development published the result of an assessment of trade and investment in Asia and the Pacific in 2019, where the Tajikistan Trade Portal was recognized as the best model and important achievement among the countries of the region. The publication highly ranked in the Tajikistan Trade Portal and described the portal as an exemplary platform for reducing time and costs of export, import, and transit, as well as making the non-tariff measures simplified and transparent. On the 1st September of 2020, the single window on export, import, and transit procedure clearance was introduced with the support of Asian Development Bank that would significantly streamline Tajikistan regional and international trade. Necessity of the realization of this system was noted in the address of the founder of Peace and National Unity, leader of the nation, President of the Republic of Tajikistan, His Excellency Emomali Rahmon, to the Parliament of the Republic of Tajikistan on April 25, 2005. Currently, 11 state bodies are integrated in the system. Launch of the single window system not only implemented an obligation of the Republic of Tajikistan under the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, but also simplified the certification and payment procedure. The system is also considered as an effective tool for the trade development and at the same time for combating the COVID-19 pandemic, because the operations with the system are conducted with the close contact. It is worth to mention that with the support of Ashgabat Tajikistan, working on accession to the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific. The government of Tajikistan had determined during turning Tajikistan into transit country as one of the strategic goals and demonstrated significant progress by constructing new roads and rehabilitating existing transport infrastructure. Therefore, in order to maximize regional economic partnership and development, it is necessary to mobilize adequate financial and investment resources of development partners to low-income countries of Central Asia to address these challenges, namely lack of infrastructure and costly cross-border trade of transportation procedure. This can be done, for example, through design and implementation of national investment projects financed by development partners linked with the regional investment projects. Both governments and development partners need to further work on implementation of trade and investment facilitation and continuity reforms. The government of Tajikistan in its international relations is committed to take necessary steps to boost trade, improve connectivity, and expand economic partnership with all countries of SPECA and the world. In a conclusion, I'm sure that the use of SPECA platform would allow the participating countries to make a coordinated decision in the direction of creating favorable conditions in the fields of trade facilitation. Thank you, dear moderator, Ms. Sezin, for giving the floor.
Thank you very much, not just for a very good speech, but also for being within the time limit. So thank you for that. Just wanted to highlight one thing, the importance of this trade portal. I would like to congratulate your government in launching it and for so many national organizations joining in on this exercise. I truly hope that it brings the benefits that you're hoping it will help. So with that, let me move on to our next speaker, who's actually one of the discussants. So while making their statement, maybe the next two speakers could also reflect on what's been said until now by the previous speakers. The first one of our discussants is Mr. Zahid Hussein Abbasi, who is the Director for Trade and Investment at the Economic Cooperation Organization. He has extensive experience in public, private, and international development sectors, including the position of Deputy Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce in Pakistan. So the floor is yours, Mr. Abbasi. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sezin, the moderator of the session. I am thankful to the administration of SPECA, to UNECE and the Kyrgyz Republic for providing me this opportunity to speak on this forum on behalf of the ECO. Ladies and gentlemen, we are transiting through a turbulent time of a severe pandemic. And this pandemic has actually resulted in unprecedented colossal economic slump. And I would term the situation as nobody is safe until everybody is safe. As our previous speakers have already discussed this, and I agree with them, the GDP growth rate around the globe has been declining by 4.4%. And the recovery, projected by the WTO, that it would be like V-shaped or L-shaped, it will take a lot of time. In the ECO region, the countries have been, affected very early in the pandemic, and there has been a contraction of 16% in exports and 14% in imports, and around 4% decline in the GDP of the region. And the trade volume that was 670 billion before pandemic has been reduced by around 4.5%, 1.4%, and it is expected that it will grow if by good recovery, it will be like $600 billion, and if recovery is not good, it would be like $500 billion. So the ECO region has been affected like other regions of the world, and the steep sectors with complex value chains and services sectors like travel and tourism and hospitality, they have been affected a lot. Regarding, yes, I agree with our speakers. They have been dilating upon the panacea for the future in trade is digital platforms, digital trade. Yes, that is the case, because if we see the United Nations Commission for Trade and Development, they conducted a survey, and that survey actually showed that the consumer participants from the developing and emerging countries, 52% of them actually stated that they have shifted to online shopping. And likewise, 49% of those from the developed countries, they have informed that they have shifted to e-commerce. And 85% of the participants stated that they prefer home delivery of the products instead of going to the markets. So this is a clear indication that yes, the consumer choice is also for the global, for the digital trade around the globe. Now, this is trading within the country or this is trading across the borders, international trade. The preference is, whether it is online shopping or e-commerce, the preference is digital trade. Now, we see that historically, as our speaker has very rightly informed us, historically when we were talking about digital trade, we were talking about things like it is transparent, it is more easy, it is less costly, the trade cost is less, the lead times are less, and it is more efficient and more swift. But now, in this pandemic, we have another dimension to it, and that is it is less infectious. So it is non-infectious trade because it involves social distancing as by its own design, by its own nature. Moreover, as our speakers have already dilated upon this, and I agree on, I would like to add on that trade facilitation usually used to talk about the bigger firms, bigger countries, and the small size firms, small size businesses, and especially the consumers, they were not much focused on trade facilitation. I mean, but the pandemic has actually revealed these inequalities, and there was a demand on the behalf of the small and businesses and consumers that they should, they should have an access to the online platforms, digital platforms. And that is why there was a lot of demand and pressure on the internet providers that they should increase the bandwidth. And a lot of money has come into the digital sphere for transforming the traditional trade into digital trade, but because of the compulsion, because of the demand that increased due to COVID within the countries and across the borders. So we have these estimations that an average custom transaction involves around 30 parties, 40 documents, and 200 data elements. And there are complex legal frameworks, there are complex rules, and there are complex administrative frameworks across the countries involving a lot of cost, filling of a lot of forms with different templates, different data templates, language barriers, varying non-tariff barriers, and then the rules of origins and that thing. So the processes for exports and imports were quite cumbersome for the small-scale businesses. But with the digital platform transformation, we can actually make it more transparent, as our speakers have already said. And I think that digital trade will also increase the access of small and medium businesses to other parts of the globe, and that they can trade, and then that prosperity factor will come into play. In the ECO, there has been, some work done on this, and we have actually firstly, we were the first one to be affected by the COVID in the region. So there were some initiatives that have been taken, like the use of electronic solutions and procedures such as ETIR, ECMR instead of paper documents, and release of on digital platforms, and then how to track them. And member states were requested to transmit their policies and latest procedures electronically, and there is a study being conducted on this non-tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, especially put in place by the member state. And especially I would talk about, exactly there was our deputy minister, the colleague talking about the non-tariff measures converted to non-tariff barriers. Yes, that's a very important area, because non-tariff measures, if they are tempted, countries are tempted to keep, then they would be non-tariff barriers, and they would hinder the trade, and they would hinder the supply of foods and essential items. So we have to keep a check on that, and we are having a study on that. We are also having a study on this clearing union, eco-clearing union, so that the digitalization of the payment systems can increase the pace of the transactions, trade transactions. And ECO countries have already involved the agreement on establishment and operation of ECO smuggling and customs offences database in Turkey, which is actually a trade automation and toward a paperless regime. And on behalf of ECO, in the last, I would like to state that ECO is there, it's looking forward. And we are actually involving private sector through our in this paperless trade. And we have a forum of ECO Chamber of Commerce Industries, and we have actually involved them to encourage them to do this trade from paperless grounds on digital platforms, especially they can rules of origin and their conferences and their exhibitions on the virtual mode. And before concluding, I would like to thank the esteemed UNECE and ASCAP for holding this timely forum. And I'm sure that the distinguished representatives and the colleagues who have actually put on a lot of ideas, they will go a long way in shaping our future in trade, digital trade, and our region will be integrated to the rest of the world, and we will be reducing the cost of trade, increasing the transparency, and making more prosperous trade for the region, people of the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbasi. This was a most interesting statement from you. I would just like to highlight two things. You have looked at things from the SME's perspective, from the perspective of the private sector. And I was especially happy to learn that there are fora where the private sector is allowed into the discussion to be able to help the governments in coming up with solutions that fit their needs. And thank you also especially for highlighting the needs of the small and medium-sized enterprises, and not just the needs, but the prospects of what digital trade can provide to them by accessing the other side of the world in reaching out with their products. So thank you very much for those points. And now let's move on to our next speaker, who will be the last person, our last discussant in this session before we move on to our open discussion. I would like to give the floor very soon to Ms. Jana Krimpe, who is the CEO and founder of Best Solutions. She has over 15 years of experience in e-government, as well as in digital identity and e-signature technology. She has served as an advisor in the offices of 2 consecutive presidents of the Republic of Estonia, and I see that she's also been rewarded many awards for her innovative work in ICT technologies. So the floor is yours, Ms. Krimpe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Ms. Moderator, Mrs. Insinaglu. Thank you, the distinguished organizers of SPECA 2020 Economic Forum and the participants. So I have a great honor to present today the Digital Trade Hub of Azerbaijan and how the solution help to develop cross-border e-trades, usage of cross-border e-government services, and what is most important, how we build infrastructure for cross-border e-transactions, which is extremely important. Next slide, please. So Digital Trade Hub of Azerbaijan is succeeded only because of public-private partnership. And this public-private partnership is developed between Center for Analysis of Economic Reforms and Communication of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and we had the honor to have the speech of the executive director in the morning session, and partners from private sector are infrastructure, telecom provider companies, other telecom, financial sector, Pasha Bank, and our company Best Solution, which is responsible for technical implementation of this solution. What is very remarkable is that this partnership agreement was signed first time in digital format. All partners, including government, use their mobile identities to digitally sign this partnership, which is a very good sign to have the first steps toward cross-border digital e-trade. Next. So why Azerbaijan, and what is our remarkable advantages? So first of all, I would like to congratulate our country that we now enter to post-conflict period, and Azerbaijan has liberated its lands from Armenian occupation, and after fully liberation of Azerbaijani lands, starts a really new era for Azerbaijan, post-conflict period of Azerbaijan economy. And we see that Azerbaijan in a very good geographical position, even being landlocked country. We have developed great infrastructure, not only digital one, but physical one, developing our railway, roads, seaports, free economic zone, logistic hubs, and etc. Next, please. So what is also very important advantage in scaling such kind of solutions, so Azerbaijan is just big enough so we can very quickly to test different solutions, very quickly adopt legal regulations and to test the solution not only inside the country but cross-border as well. So being not too big is also very good advantage for our country. Azerbaijan is open to the world, so we are ready to share our open source code with other partner countries because we understand that each country would like to implement their own national infrastructure. So we try to collaborate as much as possible with our partner countries. And what is extremely important is that to develop whatever cross-border e-trade or e-services infrastructure, first of all, it should be done a lot inside the country. So you can't go forward if you're not developing the digital infrastructure in the country and not getting success stories and not involve the population into usage of digitalization tools. Next. So as I told, there are today impossible to build a real ecosystem of digitalization of economy, not involving all partners in the country. So in this digital trade hub, we have significant numbers of partners who are involved. It's almost all major government agency players in taxation, in immigration, in custom services, in economy, internal affairs, foreign affairs. So, and of course, our private partners like financial sector, logistic companies, investors, service providers, mobile network operators, and many more. So we are enlarging this partnership every month, inviting new partners to share the services in the one ecosystem. Next one. So we are also very proud with launching M-Residency program, which is the first in the world and the second after Estonia, e-residency, which gives a significant possibility of involving every single person all over the world to participate in our economy. Next, please. Through M-Residency, whatever person in whatever country could apply online the possibility to get mobile identity in 79 diplomatic Azerbaijani embassies around the world. And after he getting this permission and getting this mobile identity, he can, through the digital trade hub portal, to establish a company online. Immediately after that, he can open online bank account. We adopted this legacy and it's working very successfully. And he can start doing business, so usage mobile identity, not only inside Azerbaijan, for in-country transaction, but also using our cross-border platform and becoming a partner in cross-border transaction with our other partner countries. Next. Today, all our panelists spoke a lot about COVID impact, maybe in negative side. So I would like to bring positive side of COVID impact. So what we have discovered in Azerbaijan, that if you see from this graphics, that during the COVID, amount of online transactions significantly raised, and the involving of all players in the country rise significantly. So banks started very quickly to deliver a lot of remote onboarding services. Government very quickly reacted and created a significant number of new services to serve people in lockdown situation. So what we have discovered that we had experience that governments really can very quickly react in this emergency situation. And of course, it's extremely important that Azerbaijan has its preconditions and well-developed digital infrastructure. So I think that could be very important lesson for all countries. What will happen if some kind of emergency situation happen in the future? What should be this conditions done to be succeeded in implementing such a services. Next one. So of course, I told that we have involved a lot of partners, and very important if you are creating whatever e-service, cross-border e-service, is a question of interoperability. So here is important how you can very quickly include all players and databases around the country. So we are very proud that we are trying to maximally use interoperability in all our services and in cross-border services as well. Next. As I told before, we also now have a service that gives the possibility for remote bank account opening. It's extremely important, especially for SMEs who would like to start their business and cross-border business as well. And we adopted the legacy, and today all major banks are providing the service of remote onboarding and opening bank accounts for all players in the market. Next one. So of course, there are no possibility to develop cross-border trade, not developing single expert solutions. So we have developed single expert application, which is still in the development process. We have involved interoperability between 9 different state agencies to have one-stop single window to provide one single expert application for our SMEs, which extremely make the process of doing cross-border business much more easily. Next one. And through this single expert application, we also provide a free sale certificate, which is extremely important for cross-border e-trade. Next one. So what we are really proud that when we are talking about cross-border e-trade, it's a very important how we build the ecosystem for cross-border e-transactions, because not only goods go cross-border, but documents, custom declarations, fiscal documents, invoices. I'm really very interested to hear this big job done by Eurasian Economic Union in this sphere, and we are extremely interested to cooperate with all our partners building validation authority. Next one. So validation authority is created by Azerbaijan to create this ecosystem for cross-border e-transaction workflow. And we have integrated almost a service with European Union, unfortunately in one way because of EIDAS, which is quite strictly regulated participation of third countries into cross-border transaction field. But we hope that now with reforming of EIDAS and active participation of Eastern Partnership countries, we can more actively to develop the two-side validation service. So not only getting...
Ms. Krimpe, Ms. Krimpe.
Yes. So and I would like to finalize my presentation that with all these features, we are...
Ms. Krimpe, I'd like to request you to wrap up. We're running out of time.
Yes, I finalized it now. Yes, sir. So what I would like to remark that, last slide, please. So with all these initiatives we have created, it's extremely important to create both infrastructures inside the country to developing e-service infrastructure and cross-border as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Krimpe, and apologies that I had to cut you, but we're a bit over time. We have now finished the presentations and the statements, and the last one was most interesting because of the very innovative proposals and implementation that they have in Azerbaijan. I had already heard about the interesting things Azerbaijan is doing, but I found the M-residency most interesting, and I hope other countries will be able to learn from that. Now we have about 30 minutes for conversation with all of our participants. The floor is open to everybody. I would like you to please introduce yourself when you speak, when you take the floor, but also please try to limit your interventions to maximum 3 minutes. And just to guide you a little bit, let me put up a few questions. The first question you may consider when looking at everything is, how has digital trade facilitation helped in coping with COVID-19? How can countries accelerate the implementation of digital trade facilitation? That's another question. The third one is, what challenges do countries face when implementing digital trade facilitation, and how can these challenges be overcome? And how can international partners support the SPECA countries in answering these questions? These have already been discussed by the presenters, but now the floor is yours for your contributions. I will be looking at the request list to give the floor to the speakers. So if you wish to speak, please make a request, and I will indicate those who want to speak. Yes, I see Mr. Abbasi. First, let me list the 3 names I have here: Mr. Abbasi, Mr. Apostolov, and from the Ministry of Economy in Azerbaijan. So, Mr. Abbasi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor once again. I would like to share my thoughts on the questions you have posed about challenges countries face to set up digital trade across the borders and within the trading within the countries. Well, I wanted to share this, that ECO has actually carried out some research studies for the 10 member countries that we have, and we have been it was very interesting to find that there are countries who lack, internet coverage. I mean, the least developed countries and developing countries, there are the areas and the segments of society and the segments of the economy that actually are wanting and they don't have access to the internet, and as such, not access to internet of rules, data, and other countries, policies. And one of the important aspects of the WTO regulation was that it should make trade more predictable, more uniform, and more transparent. So without the access to internet, it is not possible. So we actually recommended our countries that they should try to set up these access and work with the partners. So that is an area I wanted to highlight, and that is the area where I recommend that SCAP and the UN can work with these developing and least developed countries especially. Thank you very much.
Excellent point. People need to have the basic access to be able to benefit from any measure that the government puts in place. Thank you very much. Now, please, Mr. Apostolov, over to you.
Very much, Mrs. Signanoglu. I was very interested to hear so many things about the, on the one hand, the work that has been done on digitalization. On the other hand, this great thing that we are talking about, the COVID pandemics giving a window of opportunity that people understand and work on digitalization. But let me put one key point on which we have been working for many years, and now again the COVID is giving a window of opportunity. It is true that there are different solutions. Mr. Abbasi mentioned some of the concrete solutions, the E-tier, the ECMR, consignment note, etc. And we have been defending the idea about interoperability among these different modes of transport, different sectors like transport, agriculture, the regulatory sector, because like this is business information moving in transport, agricultural sphere, and it afterwards it's fed to the regulatory data and document exchange so that permissions are given. And goods can't move faster than the information about them. And there is the important point about standards. Standards of semantic standards which allow for interoperability. You know, my son is studying and teaching in Lausanne data and IT issues, and he can create electronic documents. So afterwards somebody can use them, etc. But that's not the point. The point is interoperability. So that's why we are working on a major project which was fostered by the UN response to the COVID challenges to connectivity. And it is on the UNCFACT standards. UNCFACT is a subsidiary body which is developing standards for trade facilitation and electronic business for many years now. In the last 20 years, we were pushing for these standards for interoperability. Now there is a window of opportunity. There are standards. I showed one slide in my presentation on the list of standards. We are filling in gaps. So we would like to invite all the partners who participate in this meeting. I was quite interested. ECHO is quite active in this forum, and we will also write to them, to other partners, to develop this interoperability. Yesterday we had a meeting with OSGD, the railway organization, exactly on aligning the development of their electronic railway consignment note to the international standards, and also with FIATA last week. Some organizations are moving ahead. So this is a key point. Use the UN standards as an international public good in order to create interoperability. Because creating disparate solutions might be sexy, but it's not what we are looking after. Interoperability, allowing for the information along transport chains, along supply chains, so that the information passes from one mode of transport to another between different sectors. This is of key importance. So interoperability is a key point using the UN standards. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Apostolov. Indeed, interoperability is critical, but I also liked something else that you said. You mentioned that the services and the products that the UN provides are a public good, and you appeal to everybody to use them. I think that's critical. We're here for you, so please do use those products. So we have one more person who would like to speak. It's from the Ministry of Economy of Azerbaijan. Over to you, sir or madam. I don't know the name. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Moderator, Sezin Sinanoğlu, and my name is Artugrul Ahmadov from Ministry of Economy of Azerbaijan, and thank you for organizing such important events. And I would like to add some comments on the relation between the speaker countries and other. Also want to stress out a few points on the trade facilitation and e-commerce. Azerbaijan appreciates the activities of the speaker countries and pays great attention to widening cooperation among its member states. Also, I would like to comment that the turnover of Republic of Azerbaijan with the speaker countries in 2019 increased by 30.50% compared to 2018. And emphasizing the trade facilitation, I would like to stress out that we have completed by the government of Azerbaijan for supporting the development of local entrepreneurship as well as foreign trade, as the trade facilitation measures have become a key instruments to create a better trading environment. And Azerbaijan widely pursues open door policy towards international business, and it has established a liberal investment climate with no restrictions for foreign investors. Like there's an equal treatment to foreign and local investors, and full repatriation of profits of foreign investors is guaranteed, like allows on investment activity and on protection of foreign investment. Moreover, in order to ensure more efficient and fruitful cooperation with foreign countries in the field of investments, bilateral investments treaties on double taxation treaties have been signed with various countries. Also, Azerbaijan is not a member of WTO. It's in the process of preparing for full implementation of an advanced ruling system in the country, and the government of Azerbaijan asked for support from United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in order to assess the country's readiness to start implementing the WTO trade facilitation agreement for possible future accession to the organization. And reports finds out that the Republic of Azerbaijan has completely met 26 out of 37 trade facilitation measures set forth in the WTO trade facilitation agreement, and it means that Azerbaijan has completed 70% of the compliance requirements of TFA. And I would like to add some comments on the e-custom services and automated operation, as well as the constant development of custom business cooperation. In particular, modern tools such as implementation, green corridor, improvement of single window principle, implementation of enforcement decision project, integration to e-government and online services, launch of the transit pilot project have not only simplified the customs control and customs clearance, but also played a crucial role in improvement, transparency, and minimizing the official civilian contact from, I will mention tools like I would like to particularly emphasize the green corridor system, like single window principle. It's well known that customs services have successfully used various programs in international practice, providing simplified custom clearance and other benefits to people who gain the trust to custom authorities. And also, for this purpose, in Azerbaijan, rules for granting the foreign trade participant the right to permanently use green corridor system and suspending, repealing, and resuming the right was approved by the decree of the President of Azerbaijan in 2018. And this gating system is intended to provide certain benefits to people who cooperate with custom authorities of the Republic of Azerbaijan by applying simplified forms of customs control to ensure trade safety and supply chain stability. And it's obvious that, this is my last comment, it's obvious that automation of transaction in the custom systems plays a major role in saving time, simplifying custom clearance, and increasing the efficiency of custom control. In this regard, Azerbaijan's custom service has already started to implement e-custom system, thereby providing a range of e-services to foreign trade participants through the customs portal and the government's e-services portal. The concept of e-customs envisages work in three directions: custom business, custom state, and custom customs. The e-custom system is a national system, which means the preparation, development, and implementation of software is being done by national programmers. By the implementation of this system, customs clearance and custom control of transit and export transit goods are automated. This e-custom system combines several components: e-filing, payment control, and accounting system, controlling offense and its accounting, documentation and risk management, goods and vehicle registration, and more. Thank you very much. I am sure that post-pandemic period, our cooperation and the future development of these countries will be higher than before. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for this really interesting information. And what I see, what I hear from you is this is not just a matter of paperless trade. It's actually a mindset change all across the economy. And there are many angles from which to review this and introduce digital solutions. And congratulations for all the good work that you're doing. Thank you. Mr. Jan Duval would like to come in again and say a few words. Over to you, Mr. Duval.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, I was waiting for countries to take the floor as much as possible. But it's very interesting, some of the comments we've heard. On the questions that you posed at the beginning, right, of the Q&A session, I think, I mean, we've heard from ECO, right? I think it also formerly from Pakistan government, right? Is also that the IT infrastructure is missing in many countries. So I think definitely this is something that's important for paperless trade. At the same time, what we've seen from some of the surveys we've been doing is that if we're talking about customs readiness or government agencies' readiness for paperless trade, often the infrastructure is there. So what is really missing is the infrastructure for the people to engage in electronic commerce, to order online, depending on where they are in the country, etc. But for international trade itself, a lot of the infrastructure, at least for exchange of regulatory documents and regulatory data, is already in place. I think one thing that is missing in many cases is real, what I would call real political will. A lot of countries, a lot of governments are talking a lot about doing digital trade, but actually when it comes to cross-border paperless trade and electronic exchange of data information across countries, that really needs a level of trust and a lot of level of cooperation between countries that is often not there, right? Except for specific bilateral relationships. So I think finding ways to strengthen and to actually show real political will over the long term for exchanging electronic data and documents related to trade and related to other things is something very important, and that would indeed lead to more transparent trade and less illegal activities, illegal financial flows, and so on as well. So obviously this is one of the reasons why the framework agreement on cross-border paperless trade facilitation in Asia and the Pacific was put together. And so this is one tool, again, that can be used by both speaker countries to make progress in this area and to really show, because it's a United Nations treaty, to really show a long-term commitment to making progress in this area. One more comment on what my colleague Mario Apostolov mentioned as the importance of interoperability. And obviously this is something that is extremely important. It's actually one of the 5 core principles in the framework agreement on paperless trade. Together with this, issue of interoperability. There is the issue of the importance of making sure the solutions that are being developed on paperless trade are both facilitating as well as also enhancing compliance to national regulations. And then another principle I think that is very important in moving forward on cross-border paperless is engaging the private sector. And I think you mentioned this before. We heard from a very good presentation from private sector expert from Azerbaijan in the session. And you can see how when there is public-private partnership, how far things can really go. So I think let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dewald. You've really highlighted once again some very, very key elements. So thank you for that intervention. Participants, dear participants, you can choose to speak. We still have time. You can take the floor and say a few words if you wish. But if you have any questions or ideas that you would like to share with us in writing, you could also put them up in the chat box. I am reviewing the chat box and would be happy to read them out for you. Currently, we have a comment from Ms. Jana Krimpe, who had spoken with us a few minutes ago. I'd like to invite her to maybe read out her own comments so everybody could hear it easily. Ms. Krimpe, would you like to add a few more words again?
Mrs. In for giving me floor again. So I'm completely agree with Jan Dual that in developing and facilitation of e-trade, extremely important political will. So we absolutely understand if there is no political will and there is no readiness of the country to develop the infrastructure, there are no e-trade, cross-border trade possible. And of course, what we have discovered implementing cross-border pilot solutions with our partner countries like from European Union, from Ukraine, Georgia, Turkey, and other countries. So where there is an interoperability question is extremely important. So how we can create not only B2B services, but B2G and C2G. And what is there, especially what I remarked that there are a huge amount of B2B, but when we come to the B2G, it's a lot of open questions. And I'm also agree with our colleagues who talked about accessibility. We should understand this accessibility to the infrastructure is a human right of people. So it's not only enough to create the e-services and e-government and possibilities of usage of e-trade, but extremely important to give people accessibility to this infrastructure. So we need to think about rural areas, about gender issue. We need to think about sometimes low computer or financial literacy of small and medium enterprises. And that's what we are doing in Azerbaijan quite a lot. For example, providing mobile identity on a SIM cards to give the possibility of people, maybe from rural areas with lower connectivity, to have a full involvement into the cross-border e-trade and e-services inside the country. So I think that this is extremely important issues we need to discuss and to share our experiences and to make collaboration between SPECA countries to share best case studies and practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Krimpe. Indeed, it is all about the people at the end of the day, and we have to find all types of solutions to be able to reach out to the most vulnerable and the ones who are the most left behind. So thank you for highlighting that. There is a comment, I believe, in the chat box. Let me see. Okay, so Mr. Duval, if you could put that same comment under the participants part, everybody will maybe notice it. Mr. Duval is saying that Azerbaijan should not worry about compliance with WTO TFA because it's one of the top world performance in that area. Very good. Any other person who would like to speak? Take the floor. We still have some time. We have time for maybe one or even two more speakers or comments into the chat box. I encourage participants to comment. Okay, so let's see. Okay. I don't see any other comments. So once again, you can also put your questions. You can also address questions, of course, to any of the speakers or participants on anything specific, including our colleagues from UNECE and ESCAP, who are here to provide technical explanations as well. Okay, I don't see any questions or comments in the messages in the chat box, nor do I see any further requests for to speak. So maybe then I should start wrapping up and try to fill in this time spot. Oh, there is a message. Let's see who else came in. Okay, nothing else, sorry. Okay, well, let me then attempt to wrap up. Needless to say, I will not summarize everything that was said, but I just wanted to give you my take on the issues. Very quickly, of course. We started out by talking about all the problems that COVID has caused, and there are many of them, obviously, but I was so happy that we didn't dwell upon just the problems, and very soon after that, we started hearing about solutions, and that demonstrates how creative we are as a region, and especially solutions through paperless means, digital means. And I was very, very happy to hear of all the things that have already been done in the region, even before COVID, to set up the foundations for digital trade, for paperless cooperation. A lot of work has been done on the legal front. There's a UN treaty, and many other agreements have been already identified, but they're awaiting for ratification and approval by the member states so that they can be put into force. So I would encourage everybody to move faster in that front. Another thing that I've taken note of is that there are many fora where these issues are being discussed, not only for SPECA, but for many other topics. So I'm happy that the UN is a part of that. I would like to congratulate everybody else who's leading and convening those fora. I also noted that whether it's in the UN or in the countries themselves or through private means, there's a lot of expertise and a lot of innovation that's going on. Congratulations to everybody. And today was a great opportunity to learn from each other, take note of who has what, and maybe pick up the phone tomorrow to get more information about that. So this is very promising for all of us. But I've also heard about a lot of things that still need to be done. And let me just summarize them. I will not be able to go into all of them, and I don't need to. But there was a very strong plea by Mr. Dual, especially on a political will. Trade will become more robust across countries, across regions, across internationally, only with political will. All the expertise and all the legal arrangements will not get us anywhere if the countries do not take these agreements and these foundations to heart and put them into implementation in their own countries. So political will is at the top of what we need to achieve. Another one, and there was a very strong plea on this, is interoperability. And there was mention about standards, about alignment, about harmonization. And a lot of work has also gone into that, but much more needs to be done to understand what's out there, what you can benefit from, but then in translating that into national legislation maybe and national standards. Another plea from the floor was not to institute non-trade barriers, which can easily take the place of what we officially are implementing and cause additional obstacles to work. A very, very strong and welcome emphasis, especially from our colleague from the Best Solutions and Azerbaijan, on cooperation directly with the private sector. They know the solutions. They have ideas and proposals for the solutions. Let's please bring them on board, have that dialogue with them to see what they need to be able to trade much more. Another important element is at the end of the day, our service is for the people who are the most left behind. When we're talking about solutions, let's not forget even the most basic needs. People need computers, they need internet access, they need to know financial literacy, they need financial literacy. We have to overcome the digital divide. People in rural areas, women, elderly, these people do not maybe have as much access to digital means as they need to, as they should, to be able to benefit from trade and contribute to trade. And our proposals need to take them into consideration. And that also tells us that this is not just a job of one ministry, it is a whole of government approach, and its benefits are huge. And I just wanted to quickly also talk about the benefits and in that way wrap up maybe. Once all of these have been instituted, you will have come up with cheaper ways to do trade and decrease the cost for everybody and improve the benefits of the economies. Things will be faster, they will be much more transparent, and this will be a significant way to fight corruption. It will also create new opportunities and new markets for the traders. But there was also a very welcome mention about the circular economy. Let's not forget that digital and paperless solutions are also green solutions, and that is what the world needs today. So with all of that, I would just like to highlight one thing, that the UN is here to, of course, convene, allow you to have this forum to exchange information, to get the expertise that you want. But let me highlight one very special thing. SPECA is special. For the price of one, if that's the way to explain it, for the price of one, you get two expert agencies. You get UNECE and you get UNESCO. So we're all here with all our resources and support to make sure that you can achieve your economic goals, be better connected, and serve the people's needs much more. I believe we still have 1 or 2 minutes, but I don't see, let me see if there's anybody else who would like to say anything. Okay, and let me thank the Kyrgyz Deputy Minister of Economy for their overall chairmanship and for overseeing this meeting. And thank you, of course, to all our dear colleagues in UNESCO and UNECE for pulling all of this together. Thank you to all the participants, the speakers. And with that, I would like to give the floor back to the organizers for some housekeeping announcements. Thank you very much.
Большое спасибо, госпожа Сезин.
Thank you very much, Madam Sinanoglu. In spite of certain technical issues at the very beginning of the session, you were really efficient in terms of finalizing this event. Your results, your outcomes are so comprehensive, and your summary is really so comprehensive that I cannot even add anything, because really a very sound topic was discussed, not only in terms of expanding our regional economic links, but in terms of the future, meaning that digitalization, the future is for digitalization. And we are talking not only about political will, we are talking about economic trend that we have to shift to digitalization. And at this optimistic note, I would announce that the session of today's work of our forum has been finalized. We really had a great job. I would like to thank all the participants for their active participation, for their proposals, sound proposals. I think this is really very efficient and effective for our life. So let me conclude the third session of today's work and announce that the fourth session of implementation of digital potential in the interest of economic, sustainable economic recovery on the pandemic. The pandemic starts 9 a.m. Bishkek time tomorrow. So we are waiting for you tomorrow, and we'll continue our work. And thank you very much for today. See you tomorrow.